recently had the opportunity to have a wonderful conversation with Collette Barnes Whiteman. She has had a powerful realization about a year ago while having a conversation with David Bingham. And while being somewhat on the path for many, many years, she has kind of always had a lot of these things built in, the ability to listen to people in a way that isn't about processing what they're saying, but more along the lines of being with. You'll find quite a few really interesting topics throughout this conversation, and you can find her more on her channel, which is listed in the description below. And while she doesn't really teach, she is always open to having a conversation. So check her out there. Enjoy. What else is new? What else is new?
Do you want me to say, we just had a little conversation. Do you want me to repeat that experience that I had?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Or whether we... I'm just feeling in. I think it'd be quite nice to talk about your video I saw today about the listening. I don't know what you called the video actually, but it was about listening, different ways of listening. I think you pointed out 4 ways of listening. Mm-hmm. And you see, I've always listened. I've always liked an empty mind, always. Yeah. And even the whole journey of whatever this is, lifing. But listening to videos on YouTube, I never listened to them to get intellectual knowledge. I never wanted to write down notes and work it out. I never did that. I literally just listened to it with nothing to ever intellectually get. For me, it was always the resonance. Mm-hmm. It was always, it's going in on another level. Yeah. I don't need to know.
Does it feel
the magic?
Does it have a visceral feeling to it, physical, or is it seem to even transcend that?
I would, prior to my realization a year ago, I would literally just go to bliss. So it'd be like an open state of bliss. And sometimes just the absolute, just blackness, nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was pretty much, I was sort of doing it for the feeling. It was just, obviously there was something going in, but yeah, because it was just delicious to experience that, to I guess I was getting the taste of who I was, but I didn't realise. And and I saw Ekhart Tolle live, and literally as soon as he spoke, I was just didn't say. I was just like, I had no idea what he was saying. So I think I'm more kinesthetic anyway. So when I write, I feel it. I have to have. I couldn't dictate to somebody, and I need a keyboard in my hand. So I have to feel things to be able for them to flow. And actually, I trained as a beauty therapist when I was 16 to 18. And when I did massage, I was completely blissed out. And when I did facials, not the other things that, I don't know, I didn't get the same feeling. I didn't like the fiddly. I like the bodily contact. That's what it is. It's like literally coming now because I didn't know what it was. It was the bodily contact. So I was completely blissed out. It's as if part of me stepped aside and I just was in bliss, and I didn't have to time anything. The massage was just finished on time. I was literally doing people's facials. Completely not there. And, I was only 16, so people were saying, gosh, you've got such healing hands, you're so... And I was just thinking, I wasn't even there. Yeah. No, there was an open thing. There was actually nobody there. This listening thing sort of kicked in again when I was... I moved to London to become a model. And you get very intimate with a makeup artist, so they're very close to you. And I just love being touched. I just go, I just relax. It's so relaxing. I find it relaxing. Other people really hate it. But, and what would happen is they'd be obviously talking about their boyfriend or what was happening, and I would just come out with all this information for them. And I was aware something was being said, that it wasn't, I didn't have the information at 18, that type. I don't know. But it wasn't I'd not learned the information. I wasn't wise from experience of life. So again, after the makeup was done and they were like, thank you so much, you've really helped me. You're so wise. And I was like, thinking I didn't do any of that. I actually don't even know what I said. The flavour of what I said. So I think it seemed to be this sort of opening up and me disappearing that allowed whatever needed to come through.
Yeah,
There were just that.
It's like being an instrument, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, you said, and I was like, somebody else mentions that. So I always felt like I was an antenna. You mentioned that, I think, today in another video. I was like, that's it. I've always described it as just feeling like I'm an antenna.
Yeah.
But not me. Just actually an antenna.
There seems to be a connection in the kinesthetic space for a lot of people. A lot of the pointings here point toward allowing yourself to just feel without any of that processing, the processing that seems to come along in those conversations. And so the way you're speaking about like being touched, I remember when I was a kid and I had hair and I'd get those haircuts. It was just, I loved it. It was just gone every time. It seemed to not be there. And yeah, there's definitely something kinesthetic, and I think everyone has it for sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a primary modality. Some people are much more audio and some people are more visual altogether, but there's still, I think, something we share there. Feels good to be touched.
It's the nervous system relaxes.
Yeah. Have you ever, are you familiar with ASMR?
Yes, I have. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So it was like when I was getting a haircut, that's the feeling that it was really strange. As a kid, I always thought that I was somehow different because I would talk about this feeling that I'd get over. It was like the whole body, just like a vibration everywhere. And it would just feel so good. And everybody's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, and then it was about a decade ago, it's just in a rabbit hole on YouTube, and there was this ASMR video, and I was like, what's this? And it was like the sounds and things like that. I'm like, are human beings experience this? And it was like a whole new world had opened up. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yours was from touch and theirs was from sound.
Yeah, it would show up in sound sometimes, and you might get this when you're working with, this, say, a makeup artist, just their closeness, I could feel like almost a heat or, I don't know, I could feel they're present, and that would feel good. Like just having somebody real close, like right in that range I could feel it. Just close the eyes and it was like, oh yeah, that's really nice.
It's sort of a melting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Melting together. Yeah.
I've had people use the word bodygasm because it that kind of spills over into the sexual a little bit. But I think, even there's definitely a separation with like sexual creativity and spoken creativity for a lot of people. Yet it really comes down to any form of creativity is just a natural expression anyway. And it doesn't mean, we're going to act like bonobos and go around having sex with each other all over the place. But intimacy and sexuality, we don't have a really clear boundary there. And sometimes in the state of listening, it's just a really intimate experience. It's really close. It feels like, those blurred boundaries that were spoken about. And sometimes other people get the sense that means something, that means Josh want to get naked with you kind of thing. And that's not, it's not really the case. And it makes sense.
They just interpret they're maybe just picking up in a different one.
Well, I think it just, when it comes to identification, intimacy almost always has a sexual connotation for some people, just through the interpretation. But that doesn't mean that that's what it is. For example, I have a really long-term female friend, and we've been very intimate since we've known each other, but it's never crossed over into a romantic or sexual way. We've slept in the same bed, spent a lot of time cuddling, but it was never, it was strange. It was more like a sibling,
natural.
Yeah. And so it became really clear what intimacy really was versus what the interpretation seems to be at that point. So
I wanted to mention the breath as well.
Yeah.
So when I get this intuition or whatever you want to call it, when somebody's talking and I suddenly think, oh, hang on, I need to listen here, I would then connect with their breath. I connect my breath with their breath. Sort of, it was just an intuition of that's how I connect.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And then it would just unfold. But I'm just mentioning it because I think people do this and don't realize. And it's almost, so I had the self-realization that we can talk about later if you want. But when I had the conversation with David Bingham, he mentioned, oh, you've been doing this. He could see it. You've been doing this all your life. And I couldn't see it. And it's only now I can see that what I was doing there was this breaking of the subject-object, the connecting the breath. It was the oneness that I was naturally just doing. And I think people probably are doing it, not realizing.
Yeah. The way it's usually described here is it seems like we exchange content like this sometimes just on the intellectual mind level, but there's always something that's underneath that's felt, that's shared. Oftentimes, even when I'm having sessions with people, let's say in Australia or something, I get a very visceral feeling, like I can feel them, like they're right here, like almost like we're about to hug, like they're that.
There's no distance. Yeah, that's the same with me here. There's no distance. Yeah, it seems crazy to think you're somewhere else.
Well, and then so I have a conversation with a neighbor, let's say, and he likes to talk about cars, and he's like, oh yeah, 5.0, liter engine and all this stuff, and it's so interesting because even though there's this exchange of just information underneath, there's a very clear feeling about that connection. And maybe it's not very conscious in how the mind functions for him, but it's very clear here. And I think that is part of the reason he loves to engage. And he just doesn't have a conscious sense of that, because he just loves to just sit there and chat. And you could tell it feels so good to just be in the midst of that for him. And it's easy to be there. And that's that capacity for any human being.
Because there's no agenda for you.
Right.
It just feels so nice just to be open and listening to somebody, because like you say, it's effortless. So and then you actually do see the like the sparks, and you see something going on with that person, like you're saying, he's really enjoying it. You're seeing that. You perhaps wouldn't see that if you're thinking of the next thing to say, or you're trying to get your point across, that whole there's no to and froing. It's just being an open space for somebody to be. So it's, and it feels so good just to do that.
It's intimate. It really is. Yeah. I mean, the faces he makes, the gestures he makes, it's like being those gestures. It's like being those expressions as he's doing it. And it's just enjoyable naturally. There's no real reason for it. It just feels good to be that close to another human being, because there's really no lines drawn, Here's a question that maybe you can provide some insight to. It would be beautiful to hear your take. A lot of people have questions about this because they want to experiment moving away from the conceptual exchange of listening and thinking about the next thing they want to say and all that. When you're completely immersed, does it end in tragedy if you're not completely engaged in that conversation with the head? Does it seem like that person gets upset because you're not really listening. Yeah.
No, they love it because you really are listening.
Right.
It's the opposite. Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah, it's like there's a settling down of what's going on. I'm to think about it while I'm not thinking right now to what is actually going on. I mean, they're receiving so much more of you because you're not putting your personality up. There's nothing to get. There's nothing to do. You're not trying to fix or change or improve them. You're just there for them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Somehow
you're so there for them.
Completely there. Like, even if
the right words come,
you're giving them a hug somehow.
Yeah.
There's like a, an image is arising, and I know this is still conceptual, but it's almost like an umbilical of energy comes out, and it's just like this playful space of, it's just dancing. It's like Kundalini energy. And it tends to feel good for both people. But, a lot of the doubts that arise when I bring this up in session or otherwise is, well, if I'm not listening, won't that offend them? And it's just like, it's really not about the content of the conversation. It seems that way, but it's not. And you did bring something up. The words that come out are just coming out. You're not speaking them. They're just kind of coming through like an instrument. So
the right words are said at the right time. Yeah. Well, you're meeting them where they are. You're not trying to force them to be anything. You don't have an agenda in the conversation. You're not coloring it with anything else other than just being there for them.
Was there ever a point in your life that this felt like, in your recollection, was it always this way for you to be able to listen in that way?
Yeah, I don't always do it in the conversation, with my girlfriends and we're having a coffee at somewhere, But I just get a sense of when it's time to do it. There's a sense of, okay, I need to listen more. Okay. And that's
such wonderful intuition. Doesn't that feel nice to just know when you know without having to have any agenda or preparation? It just kind of comes up on its own.
Yeah. It's well, I guess the same words, effortless, because you don't, it's nothing to do. And it feels great. It's like you lose your personality, you can still. You're still expressive.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of funny. I've had people say, well, based on the tension that he's holding in his face, that, I'm not sure he's authentic. And I'm like, there's tension? Interesting. And I'm like, yes, this face is not awake.
Well, there was something that you'd said earlier, and I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, Kundalini energy you talked about. So I went to a healer. He was a trained psychotherapist, quite a sort of hidden in London. You can't really get an appointment with him. You have to be introduced. You have to go on a waiting list. Anyway, I got in to see him because I was getting a lot of pain, and I'd tried everything. Harley Street, which is the medical area of London. I'd tried everything, every type of painkiller, and I went to see him, and he did kinesiology, where they do the muscle testing. And he did some cranial psychotherapy on me, so the sacrum and the holding onto your head, and anyway, so he did all this work on me, and then he said, I'm just going to put my hand at the base of your spine. When I pull it away, I don't want to move. I don't want to pull up to let my hand out. Just relax. So I was so desperate to be better that I was up for anything. I was like, make me stand on one leg, feathers in my hair, and I'll do it. I don't care, whatever. Dance around me. whatever I'm going to do within reason. But I was pretty, and he said it's rare to have somebody so, so open, so surrendered. So when he took his hand out from underneath my spine, I just sort of shook. I was lying down. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. I thought, okay. And then I shook again. He was like, oh, okay, your body's just healing itself. It's just unwinding. So, and I thought, okay, so I can stop it. It's not happening. And then I can allow it. And so it just, I think, had an hour and a half of just complete coming up off the couch, cracking my neck, back up, opening my jaw really wide and cracking that and going back down. I did, he said, oh, you're doing Shakti dancing. I was doing like Shakti dancing. Know what it was. It was taking like forms of yoga, all sorts of ancient. I've done yoga, but it was not so yeah, there was a lot of the twirling of the hand stuff, lots of positions, and I almost broke the couch. It was crazy. And then after that, I could just do it or not do it. So I thought it was a bit odd, and this is quite a long time ago. It was probably 25 years ago. There was some internet, so I couldn't really work out what it was I was doing. But I think it was because of the linear awakening, and basically I just called it spontaneous movements, and I could do Tai Chi, or it just took different forms, basically, of unwinding the body. And I have touched other people. I did it to my husband. I just had the thought to get up, and I just touched him on the forehead, and then he doesn't do it either, but he could. So yeah, so that was great, I guess, Kundalini awakening, if that's what you call it. Yeah, I think that did help energy-wise for me. It did help. It did get rid of the pain as well. So yeah, so if anybody's going through these sort of spontaneous movements, Kundalini always, it does move like a serpent, so I get that. It always seems so mysterious. It's just your body spontaneously moving.
It is interesting. It's almost like an auto adjustment. What he said to you, I think that's amazing, because I've noticed a lot of people, if they just allow it, some people have it's almost like a resistance to it. They think the interpretation is something's wrong, or this is embarrassing, or I don't want anybody else to see this kind of thing. And I think that resistance makes it more intense. But there's definitely something that feels like it moves from right at the sacrum, right at the tailbone, moves up, and it's just like a quick little, it's like a lightning bolt or something. And it just, and if we just allow it, it actually feels really good.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it can be quite violent though. Sometimes mine was quite violent. Yeah.
Well, you said couch.
Yeah. It was quite, I was like, and I kept stopping it, thinking, okay, I can still stop it, so it's okay. And off, And yeah, I did do it for quite a long time over the years. I always sort of thought, well, I probably should be doing it more, but I didn't. I just thought something I can do or not do, really. Sometimes I do, and then if I go to yoga, it just spontaneously happens, I'm down dog, and I just do like my whole body just does a movement, and I just, doesn't really bother me. I just thought that was a valid thing that some people, because I just didn't know where to go or what to do with it. And if I do go to a chiropractor, I have to sort of keep it under wraps, because as soon as they touch me, I'll start going. I'm like one of those toys, you've wound it up, you're holding it, but it's spinning out like that. As soon as, I'm going to spin. So, and it is as long as you don't resist it, it's fine. But there is control with it, so you can't stop it. So, well, for me there was. So yeah, that seemed like a valid thing to share. Some people may be having these. It's a bit like when you yawn, spontaneous, isn't it?
Pretty spontaneous. Yeah.
You can almost can't stop and yawn.
Right.
It's a bit like that. It's
a little painful if you stop a yawn.
Yeah. So it's that spontaneous. It's like a stretch in the morning. You're not thinking, oh, I'll stretch. It just sort of happens. And you might sort of shake yourself or something. It's a bit like, you see dogs doing it all the time, cats and dogs. Yeah. So they're just naturally unwinding every day. Shake off.
I like that, unwind. The past tense of wind is wound, and a homonym to that is wound.
Oh,
it's
wow.
This body, as it unwinds, it also is just releasing somatic energy that may somehow be contained. And we unwind and we also unwound.
Yeah.
There's are you familiar with TRE at all? So there seems to be a real big connection between TRE, which is it's a form of somatic therapy that capitalizes on the body's natural tremoring reflexes, and to help people get into their body and maybe uncover some things that might be, stored there somatically.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not an expert, although I do work with some people, and it might be interesting at some point to explore how TRE and Kundalini, what the connection is. But it seems like there is something that naturally happens, and using the word Kundalini just seems to be something that's been there for a while. But yeah, anytime that it just wants to move, there was a period it felt like the body, it was almost like chiropractic adjustment, where it was just I could feel
the more you do it, the more I'm going to do it. It just, if you see somebody do it, you want to do it yourself. It's like it's
because it feels so good.
Yeah. Because
when you talk about how things feel good and how it feels good to listen, that kinesthetic aspect, I'm in the midst of that with you so deeply. And when you talked about the way you touched your husband's forehead, I mean, I could feel the touch, and something about this spot right here is just like, that's amazing. The whole ability, the power of touch for a lot of us, there's definitely something there, and it doesn't require intellectual intention, but just that complete openness that you're speaking of, it's a shared experience. And so even though it felt like, I did it because it felt really good, it was still shared. I mean, it was truly like a win-win kind of situation. Do you still get body work? Do you still get massage and things like that?
Not recently. So when I get really quiet like this, it's like I'm waiting for something else to come in. Waiting for the right thing to be said.
Oh man, I feel a very distinct vibration, like right here, like.
Okay, that's the prompt. It's Seth. I haven't really spoken about this on YouTube, but how it progressed for me was, so when I was 16 to 18, and I was learning to do, I was training as a beauty therapist, and then I went to be on trips in a minibus with people, and my hands would be like wanting to go to somebody's shoulders in the minibus. I shouldn't just touch people I don't know. You're throwing together with 8 people you've never met before. My hands are like, and always in between shots, I'd be like, we're waiting for the weather, I'd be like, oh, does anybody want a shoulder massage? So really wanted to touch people, particular people as well would stand out. And so that progressed so I didn't do it as a career, and I've never felt drawn to do it as a career, but it did progress. And basically I just wait for somebody to ask me. It's a bit like where I know to listen to people. I get a feeling they start to tell me what's wrong with them, and I think, okay, here we go. I know where this is going. And so then they'll start telling me what's wrong with them, and then my hands will start radiating. So I used to just, some people just turn up at the door and say, hey, you're looking how? I don't practice it or do it. I used to do that. I didn't need to know. I didn't want to know what was wrong with them. I didn't really need to know. And I would do the breathing. I would just sit down next to them. I would connect to them with my breath. And I would just wait. And then I would do some sort of, I call it acupressure along the meridians.
Yeah.
I had no idea what meridians were. Never trained in acupressure. But that's what I used to do. And I'd get their foot and manipulate that and get both legs. I'd be shaking the legs and pulling the legs and dropping the legs. I would be holding their head, cradling the head, a bit like cranial cranial psychotherapy, and it would rotate, and stuff would be happening. And they go, "How did you know? You went exactly to where the accident, or exactly to where the." I almost didn't want to know, because then it helped me. That okay, what's going through? What's quite important was I wasn't doing it. I knew I wasn't doing it. It was just, and I used to almost have a conversation with like, "Can we stop now?" "Oh, again, we're going to keep going." So it was really, I was like, "Oh, please, not still the foot. We can move." The personality wanted to go somewhere else because it was bored of the foot. It was like, no, we're still going to go with this foot. There was no systematic eight of like I'd learnt in massage. You do 8 strokes, and then you do. There was none of that. It was just whatever needed was done. And sometimes I'd be behind them and at the back of like in the corner of the room, miles away from them, just with my hands up in the air. And that was the antenna. I felt like an antenna then. Yeah. So I was doing that. Then it progressed. So you said about the vibrational in it. So it progressed to, I started to use my voice. Now, I'm not a particularly good singer, but I would do like, I would just make noises, and some of them were just really weird, like a mechanical clicking or odd noises. And then toning, and then overtoning. I've never learnt, but I can overtone. And I'd be doing it on, I'm assuming was their chakras. I would be spinning my hand and overtone singing. And then sometimes really close to their head, or a lullaby, I would sing a lullaby. No idea what this is, but anyway, I'm just doing it. And I'd be holding their head, and I knew they weren't there. And then sometimes it was so loud. And when they came around, I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was quite loud." They were like, "We didn't really hear anything." They were like, I was just so, can't remember, but it was as if they were just gone somewhere else. So they didn't hear it. It was crazy. I'm like taking the roof off, like embarrassingly. So yeah, I always thought, well, what do I do with this? I did train for 2 years in shiatsu because I thought that was a similar thing to it. I was so restricted because they wanted me to do it their way. I had to learn a method. The whole time I was like, I can't treat this meridian because this person lying in front of me needs that meridian treating. It seems ridiculous. It seems pointless doing it a systematical way when I know exactly what needs to be done. Because it required effort to do it that way. Because I had to learn it, and I had to try and feel it. They were telling me how to feel for the meridian lines, and it was a taught method, and it just didn't feel taught. And I think it was in Brighton, which is quite alternative in the UK. But I did warn them that I do actually use my voice. Sometimes it's quite hard not to use it. I just start humming, So it's quite hard not to use it because it is spontaneous, and I keep suppressing it. And they said, "Oh no, we're cool with that." And then they were like, "Why not actually turns up?" They were like, "Oh my God." So it wasn't the right fit for me. There's no pull to actually do it, but I don't know why I seem to be able to do it. Whether it'll come in handy later on, I don't know.
I think it's amazing that you tapped into just allowing intuition it just comes out. There's no method. I mean, it is so much in alignment with awakening in general also. For most human beings, like starting with a practice or a method can be useful, it seems, at first, yet ultimately we abandon all those things as well because there's something that just seems to show up on its own. And it's not as restrictive. It's not as cause and effect oriented, you know? And so...
Yeah. There's definitely no system to it. Yeah.
Based on all of that, it makes perfect sense somehow. And, you know, the using of the voice and everything, I mean, there's an ASMR sense there too. That was definitely one thing that attracted me to your videos was just, there's like I could feel a timbre in the voice, and there's something there. So I think that's pretty amazing that you have contact with that. Sounds like fun. I mean, at least fun.
Yeah, it is. It's just always kind of like, well, why do I do that if I don't do it? But I've learned there's no reason to anything, is that there's, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was for me.
And also, just because if there's a gift or something doesn't mean there's a requirement around it either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best part. That's where liberation really lies, is that,
yeah,
you know, it's like a lot of artists that feel like they have to find a way to monetize their artwork. It's just, no, it's art.
It's just
for the sake of art.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that really resonates with me because it is just what it is. It is just spontaneously happening. There's nobody to claim it. There's nobody to go off and, like you say, monetize it, or this has to be and nobody claiming it.
Yeah. And maybe it
spontaneously happening.
Maybe
maybe it never does.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter at all, does it? As we're finding out now, as we progress along this, everything is just spontaneously happening.
Just like this.
There's no meaning. There doesn't have to be a meaning to anything.
Yeah, that really tricks the ego, doesn't it? Because it's almost a requirement for the ego to have something to attach to in a form of meaning. You know, there was this meme I had seen recently. It's like a little cartoon. On one side, it looks like a bus, maybe, kind of psychedelic colors. There's like this little black demon-looking thing, but, you know, like a happy little demon, cartoony. And it says, nothing has any meaning, or life has no meaning. And it's like really upset. And then on the other side of the bus is like a red one. And then it's like, life has no meaning, like a smile, right? And I find that to be so common when working with people that are kind of newer on the path. And I point out that, hey, even these sensations in the body that feel like fear or sadness, it actually doesn't have any meaning. It's just thoughts that are saying that it has meaning. Yeah. And then eventually they go, so you're saying nothing has any meaning? And at first that seems like such a tragedy for people.
Like that side of the bus. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean there's no meaning? And I'm like, this is actually what freedom looks like. There's no meaning. So it's like, it's actually okay. Because meaning is
let go.
Yeah, it's a prison. It's where people get stuck. Is in
yeah, they gotta. Yeah, it's heavy.
Heavy, so heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, I encourage people to play with that. Does it have to have meaning? Does this gift that seems to be here, does that have to be used? Does that have to be what I do with my life? Because I think that's what tends to happen is now I have a purpose.
Yeah. You pick it up and run with it. Yeah. And you're making it into something it was never meant to be. Well, you're trying to.
Yeah. Like,
and then it's efforting. Then it's not effortless.
Yeah, exactly. Efforting. That's it. It's just imposing something that doesn't need to be imposed.
Mm.
You know, one of the best questions when it comes to inquiry is, does it have to be this way? Does it have to be like this? And, you know, a lot of people will come up with the answer, I don't know. And there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah. When I first self-realized, I got two things. I got no agenda and I know nothing. Yeah. And I just stick with those. There's no agenda. So if sometimes I have people who want to have a one-to-one with me. And at the beginning, it was like, okay, so I've got to perform or seek approval or fix, change, help them. They need help. If I think they need help, I'm thinking they're broken. As we know, nobody is. So it was just to remember no agenda. No agenda. And I know nothing. It's so freeing.
And that you're meeting people exactly where they are in that place. Once again, that's something that seems to be built in for you. And, I think there's a high likelihood that that's built in for every human being. It's just a matter of what thoughts seem to be present or what wants to get in the way. But to listen so completely that we don't need to change, fix, or modify anything. That's what a lot of these one-on-ones that happen here are all about. It's just, this listening, that video that came out about listening, it's listening. And sometimes words will come out, sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's absolutely nothing to say.
The silence is more beautiful, I could literally, just not say sure, valuable to people, and it's obviously my mind filling it in, but I just think there's such a beauty in silence.
Oh, well, here's a card that got written. Let's see if it focuses.
I can't see what it says.
It says, all sound is silence. It just seems to be all silence. Some sessions where it will be pretty much an hour of two of us just laughing. It just comes up that way. Or, even just sitting and just completely sitting in presence with each other. And that is just as valuable as all the exchange of, these are the problems, these are the things I want to get over. These are how thoughts are forming. It seems to be just as valuable or even more so for a lot of people. So it just shows up.
Really felt into that. What you just said, all sounds are silent. Silent. So it's not. As you were speaking, all I could hear was silence, even though there was words. It doesn't sound right to the ear to say that, but that was my experience.
Love it. The second card that randomly came up was the purpose is a trap.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Giving anything any purpose just binds you to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes it finite, right? And that anything that's finite it's more than a death. It's worse than a death. Because, in whatever death seems to be, it's always or something starts again. So another card that shows up is the death of every belief is an insight. The birth of an insight.
Yeah.
And even
letting go.
Even that insight there might be a death there too.
Yeah. It's just a constant.
Even insights have no meaning. That gets
everything just gets swallowed up.
Yeah, let go of letting go. Let go of that even. Pretty deep, beautiful stuff.
That's where we just fall into. Yeah.
Keeps coming back. Now it's feels like a triangular, like.
I always felt when I first started modeling, quite young, and I used to when these put me on the front cover of magazines, I used to sit my and what is it that you've got that when you, and I always felt quite young that I I could project out of my eyes when I was having my picture taken, so that when somebody saw the image, they would pick it. There'd be something there for them. There'd be a resonance. And sometimes I do feel this backwards and forwards motion from my eyes, this sort of it's like strong, but I don't know whether that's anything that you come across.
Yeah, it can get pretty strange. I don't usually speak about a lot of experiences, but sometimes during meditation, it's as if the eyes want to spin a little bit. It's hard to describe, but it feels like they're going like this, and then they like are merging right in this area here, like going up this direction. And then all of a sudden it's like feels like the head is blooming or something. It just like that, and no longer there's no body, no head, no hands, nothing, and it's just like this vast space that's always here. It's almost like maybe another dimensional space. Really hard to put into words. Something that's always right here, but it isn't always directly perceived, through day-to-day experience. Yeah. And it's like stepping right into this huge, vast openness that's always right here, like wider than the entire universe, it seems. And but even then, that seems to be some kind of perception, it's difficult because there's a very clear sense that even these memories it's definitely attempting to bottle lightning, which is not something we can do.
And also it really is just what's happening. It's to not look for this again, not to hold on to these experiences. It's just
that's a big one from
again. Yeah.
When they have glimpses, there's like a fixation on that experience.
How to get it back? Yeah,
it's gone now, and in a way, I remind them, it's gone, and it's always here still. It just might not show up the way that the mind is attempting to,
configure it. Yeah. So I had that falling away yesterday.
Yeah.
And of course there is the temptation to think, okay, I know it's here because I saw it. I saw the falling away of everything and the collapsing of the distance, and everything is just shapes and textures, and I can feel the temptation to want to revisit it. There was also the wisdom that's like just veil or whatever it is. It's all in good time. As much as you can handle, I really think you get what you can handle. It wasn't scary for me. I was walking down the road, I ordered a coffee. I just thought it was quite cool. Somebody was laughing, and it was a sensation inside of me. The dog was barking. That was a sensation inside of me. It was cool, but I know it's still there. So there is a temptation to want to get it back, but there's also that wisdom. It's always there, all in good time.
It's such a paradox. It's like it's ever changing. It takes form, no form, takes form, no form. And yet we always recognize it as if it's exactly the same thing. So it's always different and exactly the same thing is what it seems to be. And who knows? That even transcends.
Yeah, the day before when I was listening to one of your videos with David McDonald, I had this sense that was in the supermarkets. I had this sense that the items, the visual sense was going and coming. It was coming and going super, super fast. It was there and gone, there gone. But I couldn't see it, but I had a sense that it was being rebuilt, dropping away, rebuilt, dropping away. I was looking at these cans, like, wow. And I got the sound of a flickering, it's like a movie reel that's come undone. It's going click, 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 click. That's my head, as if it was being built. It was there, not there, there, not there. just appearing and disappearing constantly, but so fast.
Amazing. Yeah.
I don't know, it was something triggered by what you guys were saying. Part two of one video. Yeah, sort of reached out and left a little on. Yeah, there was some trippy stuff. Finds always in supermarkets is quite a cool place to be.
Always.
Because you've got the people, and they're like, it's so easy to be one with the people in the supermarket. Like you're all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all one anyway because we're all shopping. But it's just there's something. Don't I go to the cinema? I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot going on, and for some people that feels almost like a borderline chaotic experience.
There is some chaos, isn't there?
Like absorbing of energy, or just this dancing with energy. It's, the last time I was at the supermarket, maybe a week ago, I had a visceral sense that I might just start crying because of how good it felt to be. I don't know, just like looking at how everything seemed to be organized, and it kept feeling like love, like the food. And it was like, oh, it felt like nostalgia. Like, oh, I felt like a little kid in a candy store in a way, And I'm just like, oh. And then people would walk by, and I could feel, as they walked by, I could feel them. It's just like a massage over the body. And I was like, ah. And so before I knew it, I found myself just wandering, body's moving, doing what it's doing, hands are grabbing whatever. And then in the end, I'm looking in the cart and going, I
didn't get that.
Grab these things.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same.
It's
shopping gets done, but you're not really.
And when you're saying everyone's doing the same thing, there is something very interactive, even if it doesn't seem to be on the surface interactive. So strange.
Yeah, there really is an energetic exchange in the supermarket. There is. People glance, eyes catch. Something happens, and then you pass, and then you might see them again, and there's that party again.
It's like, oh, hello, friend. Hello, friend. How are you? Right after I had met Angelo, I was the supermarket was the place to be for some reason, and I would be in there, and I would find myself like magnetically attracted to other human beings, and just find myself pretty close distance, and conversation would somehow happen, and I'd be like, at the end of the conversation, I'd be like, hug, and I would be hugging people in the supermarket for hours. It was like I was living in this utopia, It was the place to be.
Yeah, if you get you, I don't know what it is. Well, all of those things. It's that the products are all just lined up and all just mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Like never before. Rows and rows, and there's a lot going on,
It almost like they're of kind of blocking that out a little bit before. I don't know. Like
we weren't seeing it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's just like a wave. A wave of
that there. Yeah.
Energy.
Sometimes.
And even the fact that it's like food itself, I could feel that too. It's so visceral. Like I walked into the supermarket, and there was a big mound of mangoes. And I live here in Colorado. It's about 7,800 feet or 2,300 meters, right? So we're pretty high. We don't get a lot of tropical produce just in general. And there was this pile of mangoes, and I found myself over in the mangoes, and I was like grabbing one, and I could feel the fingertips like sinking into the skin of that mango. And the thing that came out of my mouth, no prediction, just came out. It was loud. I said, I fucking love mangoes, like that. Because in that moment, there was nothing in the world that mattered more. Mango, just this mango. I'm like, oh, mango. And I felt the energy of the whole supermarket, like felt like everybody just hit the brakes, like. And I'm like kind of looking around. I'm like, all the eyes are over at here, and I'm just like holding this mango, and it felt like, it felt like being a little kid after.
I was going to say exactly that.
Cookie jar,
but that's what a kid would do, wouldn't it?
at all.
Yeah.
It was like all eyes on me and no guilt. Like, I want to share it with everyone. I'm like, you, mango.
You too. Grab a mango.
Oh, mango. We can mango together. Oh, God.
Oh, brilliant. Whoa.
I love it.
It's like you're just really living life.
Yeah, I mean, where are the hesitations and the boundaries, when there's no longer any perception? It just...
You're not conforming to who you think you should be.
I'm so glad you used that word. That's a word that's come up quite a bit, too. Maybe that's all the identity is about conformity. It's about keeping human beings as a unit in a state of survival. And if not in a state of survival, maybe we don't need to be bound in such a way. Because we're bound anyway, but it's not in the way that the identity says. Sometimes it feels like I'm a thumb and I come across an index finger on the same hand.
Well, do you think there's so thinking out, obviously don't mean think. There's something that's driving us all forward. I call it divine will, and I don't even know what divine will is really. But for me, I felt like I was really driven. That seeker I didn't even know I was a seeker until I self-realized. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was a seeker. But there was a driving force.
Absolutely.
And I even experienced it. I went to see Muji live years ago before he was, like 20 years ago, maybe before he moved to Portugal. I don't really know much about Muji, but he was from Brixton in London. And I went to see him. I'd never been to a satsang before. And I only managed to get in at the very back of the room. And so, and I was just mesmerized by him. And I do the thing where I just listen to him. I don't really pay attention. I just go. And I'm just in love, really. So, and I just want to skip a little bit forward because it was really early days of YouTube, and somebody sent me a video or somebody posted a video on Facebook or something about Muji, and my kids were little, they're 21 and 18 now. And I remember clicking on it and watching this guy, and I just fell in love. And I dropped down into my heart center and went, and I could sense the kids were there. They were running around, and I was just completely in love. Just fell in love with him. So I went to see him, and I was at the back of the room, and it was half-time break or whatever. He'd done his 2 hours, and I was thinking, great, okay, I'll go and get lunch. I'm at the back. I can whiz out. I'll be, in the queue, or I'll go to a cafe. So I got all planned to go, and said thank you very much. We're finishing now for lunch, and I raced towards the stage. Part of me was like a cartoon character saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I was trying to run backwards. My legs were racing forwards, and I was like, my heart was like bang, 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 because it's so not what I would do, not my personality, and also I didn't know what I was doing. I was just running towards the stage like a mad person, and I had my head on sandwiches. Why am I running towards the stage? And I was like third in line, and I just knew I wanted to look into his eyes. I was looking for myself. I knew that. I was looking for myself. And so I didn't know this is what happens. He gives people hugs for another half an hour. Then he goes off and has his breath. I had no idea, but my legs seemed to know what was happening. So I got on stage, and he said, he went to give me a hug. I said, "Oh, can I look in your eyes?" And I just held on to his hands, and I looked into his eyes. And I was desperately looking for myself. And just to add to the story, so I've let go of the divine will bit for a second. The next day I was in the middle of loads of people. I couldn't really see him. But what he did used to do, and he might probably do it now, those crowds are so big, he would look everybody in the eye at the beginning. So he'd spend quite a long time catching people's eye. And I knew at this point from yesterday, all I needed to do was meet him. Whereas before I was looking for myself. We met across the room. I was just like, oh, that, it was myself. And then the third day, I got like the back room. I couldn't even see him. I started to panic. And I was like, I need to see him. Oh my God, I can't see him. And then I was like, oh no, it's okay. Because he's everywhere. I don't need to see him. I was in a side room that had no vision of him. And the relaxation was, he's everywhere. And I'm everywhere. He's me, I'm him. There was that blending. I didn't need to find myself anymore. We'd met, and then I'd realised that we were one anyway. We didn't have wording. They quite happily sat in bliss without singing. So that was the time when he took me up on stage. There's no way I would have done that, and I had no idea to do it. So there is a driving force for people. If you find yourself being propelled into things. So like having a YouTube channel, I definitely wouldn't have had one. So my mind would have given me all the excuses not to do it. I used to be quite a perfectionist, so everything would have had to have been perfect. So I'd never have got first one out there. Backdrop, the thing, the lights, everything I would have been critical, would have looked it through, edited it, and so I wouldn't have done it. And the way it transpired was I would walk past this desk and I would just get the feeling to sit down and talk. And I never had anything prepared. I would just speak.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that happened for probably about 8 months. Oh, no, sorry, I've not been on there a year. So I was self-realised a year ago. That's just I'm calling it that. It even feels strange to call it that, but something happened a year ago. And 4 months later, I started the YouTube thing. Just checking where I'm going with that now. So sitting down to do it. Oh yes, and then I felt there's some stickiness coming in. Felt like, oh my goodness, there's a doer now. There's somebody who's doing this. It's suddenly there was an agenda. I really didn't like it. I thought, oh, I don't like this. No. It doesn't feel good at all. So I really, really would check in, because there's that thing of, okay, if you put another one out, and I was like, no, I don't want to, I'm not picking up that ticket to identity and a person doing it, because it wasn't effortless. It was starting to feel, what am I going to say? And I was like, oh, no, I don't like this. So I sort of stopped the momentum a bit. And then I had a point where I just dropped it. I was like, there's no pull at all to do it at all. No pull at all. Wow, there's just no pull to ever do another video. Or I might do one, but there's no pull at all. So that was interesting.
Yeah, this is a good thing to bring up. Angelo early on was like, why don't you just make a video or two? And it was, so I would sit and be like, is there a video? And there was no video. There was nothing. And I was like, well, nothing. And then I was doing a session with my friend Youssef. He runs another channel called Propane Fitness. And he was like, why don't we just take this session and turn it into at least some short videos? And I was like, sure. I mean, it's easy to say yes to anything that comes this direction. And so it was a very short period of time, and he had like loads of different varieties of videos from that session. And he's like, here you go. So I'm like, okay, I guess I could just upload them to a YouTube channel. And it kind of took off on its own. Yet there's also a very clear knowing that's not really justified. That is, if there's any time that this feels like there's effort, then it changes. And that also means working with other human beings. There's, maybe there's a point where there's a complete dissolving and vanishing. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That I think what I had to offer at that beginning, that innocence of what's just happened to me, because I wasn't teaching. All I have ever done is just shared where I was. So I think that just came to a natural end. Because from what's been unfolding now, I needed to. So for me, it's been So it was the identification. So I always had that sense of bliss and wisdom. It always makes thing. And I could open, I felt like when I asked the question, who am I am, and I'd just go to nothing. Absolute nothing. So that part was very natural for me. I mean, all of it's natural, that for this human, maybe. And then I had an interview, I spoke to David Bingham, and within about 5 seconds, he pointed out the identification bit. I hadn't got that bit. That who this is, I'd been called Collette, and I believed them. Oh, this is Collette, but actually this is just in. So it pointed out that bit. So then what I shared with everybody was just this openness and this expansiveness, and oh my goodness, I'm just everything. But in this way. So it wasn't that I don't look and think that I'm one with everything, but when I look, I can't see that I'm not one with everything. It's the opposite way round to how I thought it would be. But when I look, I can't not see myself. When I look out, I can't see where I'm not. That makes sense. But for me, it's always been this opening and this expansion and this beingness and this stillness and there's no words. But it feels like now that there's the more of the inquiry, more of the turning in, more of the questioning. Or okay, so that's what I am. Or what am I not? And I don't think I really did that bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why maybe listening to that video and then the dropping away. There's something changing. Obviously, there's always things changing, but yeah, that's just what's appears to be happening. So there isn't a pull, yeah, but you may recognize that motion, that opening, but then that now the pull, the inquiry, the inner. I just thought it might be something you recognize in people who come to you.
There's definitely like a sense of creation and destruction. So that's just putting it really directly. That turning in, the first experience in awakening, or whatever it was like going supernova, like just exploding outward endlessly, just this expansion. And then for some reason, it began to like spiral toward a singularity that felt very much centered here. And it was like this compressing and crushing, and it was pretty intense, actually. And then there was neither of those. It was just nothing. But even then, there was not even an ability to sense the nothingness. It was just gone. And maybe it's still that way. It's weird. The memory, the brain doesn't seem to hold on to recording events as much. And there's been large periods of time where people will tell me stories about things that have happened, and I'm like, cool. And I was there.
Well, you had that time, didn't you? Because you said you contacted Angelo, and he was like, "Where have you been?"
Yeah, that was, and there's also a sense that, somebody said, "Oh yeah, you've been doing a great job, and you've only been doing this since November," and I'm like, "No, I've been doing this for thousands of years." It feels like it's always been this way. I don't know. It's pretty strange, but it's when we no longer live in expectation, because expectation seems to be like positioned in the past, projecting itself over the present into the future. This sense of time begins to compress into just like a razor's edge. And even though there was something in the calendar and you and I had made some sort of plan, to chat, it didn't exist until it existed. There's no lead up, there was no build up, nothing going, oh yeah, I can't wait. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yes,
the spontaneity, isn't it?
And here we are. So yeah, what a beautiful adventure, and seems to be so unique and also so universal. The paradoxes just don't really stop. But how wonderful is it that when you're speaking of these kinesthetic things, it's just that's me, that's you. I mean, where's the difference? Where's the separation? It's pretty clear. And there's a very strong sense that every human being shares that. It just feels that way. It feels like we can feel each other feeling each other kind of thing. Like some kind of orchestra or vibrating like a chord of music. Kind of nice.
It's lovely to have that, being able to just disappear and not feel like you need to put something in, you need to perform or fill anything with anything.
Yeah. No more requirements. Requirements are tricky.
Pardon?
Requirements tend to be pretty tricky for people too. It's a sense that there's an order of operations with everything, and that if you don't fulfill this exact formula, then you cannot reach a state of happiness. And it seems to be on a very fundamental level. What the identity is telling us is that before I can be right here.
Sorry, you cut out for me there.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. It's
saying before I can be right here, right now, I have to do these other things first, and then after I can be right here, right now. It's kind of funny. And we buy it a lot, if I get the house, if I get the partner, if I have this many children, then I can step into happiness. If I retire, whatever the reasons are, there is no waiting for now. You cannot wait for now. It just is. And
delicious when you're in it.
That's all there is. And there is no trade-off. There's no cost, and there's nothing worth holding on to in replacement of it.
Yeah.
There's no job worth it. That's for sure. And then it becomes kind of cool how the universe, we're just totally taken care of.
We always were. We just thought we would.
Yeah, life seemed to be the hardest when there was a need to manage the prevention of tragedy, of losing, a job or losing, where I was.
Yeah, all that energy and thought about something.
And that's when it was at its worst too. Ironically, it was like a creation of that because of the belief was like that's all that could be seen, and then it's just like this never-ending. Oh yeah, things always work out better than they can be imagined.
They always did.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So good to see you. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation.
That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to talk about that energy sort of, but it just, whatever needs to come out comes, and if it helps somebody or.
Just what a cool share. Even if there's no reason, it just.
Yeah, exactly. Again, no agenda. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's just spontaneous. It's like a star, doop, there you go. And, there's vulnerability there, and that's intimacy. When you were talking about like falling in love with Muji, I'll just say it. It's like every time I speak with somebody, there's a sense of falling in love with them. Like there's a sense of falling in love here in this moment with you. It's just clear. Mm-hmm. Like just watching how you express and the sound of the voice. It's just like, oh, I know you. I know you.
Yeah.
And nice to see you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And this part of me thinking, oh, could be what happens. I have people who I speak to on Zoom, and you just do. Just like, I do. It's such unconditional. I don't have done what they're here for. None of that.
So, yeah. Like, how could we possibly be evaluated? It just really doesn't make any sense anymore. Oh, I do this for work. Cool. But there's something in you that when that's connected to, that there's no way to value that. It's just perfection. Every human being. Yeah. Past the surface of all the layers of identity and all that stuff. Even though it's tricking you into believing that you have to dress this way, you have to look this way, you have to have this level of weight on the body, you have to have all these requirements. It's just total bullshit.
Yeah. It's just thoughts.
And because underneath that is something that's pure, immutable, and it's just always been there. And might as well see what that's all about. Who knows? You might find out that you really, really enjoy yourself. So much that, you lose that too. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.